Social Media and Mental Illnesses in Teens by Han Lee, Mario Montez, Braden Griffin, and Connor Randall. Now, social media started in the early 2000s, and since then has grown to over 5 billion users today. According to NIH, also known as the National Institute of Health, over 93% of teenagers aged 12 to 17 are connected to the internet today. Now, this graph demonstrates the percentage of US teens with depression. Along with social media growing, the number of teens with depression is also growing too. Since 2010, girls have increased by 145%, while boys have increased by 161%. Now, a quote from NIH, National Institute of Health, by Wu, Liu, and Tian, 3 psychologists from the School of Sociology in China, stated that SMU, also known as social media use, has a negative correlation with SWB, also known as subjective well-being, through internet addiction. Well, why is the internet addicting? According to Kathy Cattell, a senior writer at Yale Medicine, exposure to social media can overstimulate the brain's reward center, and when stimulation becomes excessive, it can trigger pathways comparable to addiction. This is because dopamine is released when you use social media and technology, and this is known as the feel-good chemical. And so when you do something that releases dopamine, you want to do it again because you enjoy it. What is a mental illness? Mental illnesses can be defined as anything that alters your mental state. It can take different forms such as anxiety or depression. The problem we identified was that there are many mental illnesses that have been showing up because of social media. And the solutions we found were, first, that parents can limit the time spent for their adolescents. And the second one is that federal government can change digital rights on social media.
The first solution that we recognized was if parents limit adolescents' time spent on social media. Parents would have to be more involved in their child's use of social media and determine what content is and is not appropriate for them as well. Limiting social media has also shown to yield many positive benefits. Yolanda Chasiokos, a pediatrician in Los Angeles, California, recommends that parents should be encouraged to develop personalized family media use plans for their families that attend to each child's age, health, temperament, and developmental stage. There are many strategies that parents can use to limit their child's use of social media. The American Association of Pediatrics highlights 3 main types. Setting a time limit where adolescents can only use social media for a certain amount of time, using parental control applications that can block specific content, and setting up tech-free areas where adolescents no longer have access to their devices. Christopher G. Davis, a psychologist at Carleton University, did a brief 4-week intervention using screen time trackers that showed reducing social media use among heavy social media users, reporting symptoms of depression or anxiety, yielding significant reductions in symptoms of depression, anxiety, and fear of missing out, and increased hours of sleep relative to a comparable control group. Another study done by David Lubins, a researcher at the Center of Physical Activity and Nutrition in Australia, concluded that limiting time spent on social media also promotes physical activity. Both of these shows that by limiting the use of social media, it can also yield many benefits. This would mostly impact adolescents depending on how much their parents implement the strategies stated above. It would also help lessen the amount of time, which we have stated before, that can also help their mental health and physical health. The limitations would depend on the parent, depending on how much they enforce the strategies, and it would also, another limitation would be that since teens depend so much on social media for their connections with other, it can also cause them to feel loneliness.
Solution 2, federal government changing digital rights to social media. This solution proposes that federal government steps in to change certain features of social media to combat mental illness problems. Anjali Popat, a psychologist, argued that removal of the like button could help reduce approval-seeking practices. Many adolescents felt that compulsive monitoring of feedback on their posts was fueled by the desire to fit in and triggered anxiety. Impacts of federal government changing rules. Changing rules for social media usage may affect people's rights to freely use social media. This would affect anyone who uses social media, mainly people who spend a lot of time on it. From a poll by Boston College, a strong plurality, 46%, disagreed or strongly disagreed with the US government regulating social media platforms, compared to 28% who agreed or strongly agreed. Most people don't want government stepping in to regulate their social media usage. Limitations. The first limitation is that there are not too many studies to back this up. This could go against people's rights. Only 3 to 6% of bills are passed, making this unlikely to be passed into an actual law. As stated by Brian Fung, lawmakers usually disagree on solutions to problems. According to CNN author Brian Fung, who specializes in government adjustments to social media, because the two parties come at the issue from opposite perspectives, so do their policy prescriptions, creating a fundamental inability to reconcile.
Intentionally limiting time spent on social media is the best solution to reduce its negative impacts on mental health. Reducing social media use can have many beneficial effects, such as increasing productivity, strengthening in-person relationships, and developing better sleep habits. Chris Palmer, a Harvard psychiatrist and researcher on mental health, reported that researchers recruited 230 students in the United States, half of which were asked to limit their social media usage to 30 minutes per day and received daily reminders asking them to limit their usage for 2 weeks. The limited social media group reported significantly higher positive effects and significantly lower levels of anxiety, depression, loneliness, and fear of missing out at the end of the experiment than the unlimited group. So why is limiting social media a better solution? It allows parents to be more heavily involved in their child's digital life, and research shows that mental well-being sees an increase when less time is being spent on social media. Another reason why limiting social media is a better solution is because there are many limitations on changing digital rights. People can argue that if digital rights are changed, the government is being too controlling over human rights. On top of that, there isn't sufficient evidence backing this idea up. According to a CNN author, Brian Fung, apart from the pressure outside groups bring to bear, lawmakers own conflicting priorities and incentives can make legislating difficult.
And is there a bibliography?
Wait, I wasn't done.
Let him finish first.
This quote shows that making laws on digital rights can be difficult because lawmakers have conflicting priorities. In conclusion, overuse of social media is one of the major reasons behind mental illness in adolescents. Limiting time on social media is the best solution to fighting the mental health crisis because it reduces exposure to negative content and unrealistic standards.
And there's the bibliography.
There it is.